Hey there, my name is Shane Craddock, and this is the Inner Edge podcast, where I share a different take on how to lead and live a sustainable high-performance life. Over the course of different episodes, I'm going to challenge the belief that tension, stress, and struggle are essential to success and creativity. My experience is that there's an easier way, there's a better way, and indeed there's an essential way that we need to explore for the times that we live in. So let's go ahead, let's jump in and explore. Hello there. I was reflecting over the last couple of days as to what the next title of this particular podcast series would be. And I was just thinking sometimes life will bring in things that you just don't expect, maybe you don't even want. And certainly for the first few weeks of the start of 2026, that's definitely, I can relate to that. It happens to everybody. But I also like to get tested in a weird way, about what I think I know and what my work is around. And I think this particular topic is an interesting one to consider. Like when things don't go the way you want, like how do we handle that? And the reality is that we all know logically that things just will not always go our way. They won't go the way that you want. Markets will drop. People will leave your company. Or your life. People will do the opposite of what you ask them to do. Deals will fall through. Plans will just fail and collapse. People get sick. People die. Pets die. Health changes. Life has its own thing, and it interrupts us. It disrupts us. But yet, when it happens, even though we know it's true, something inside us it's a universal thing. It reacts as if this shouldn't be happening. That life has made a mistake. I shouldn't be. Why is it doing this to me? And what I've learned myself in my own experience, and certainly working with a lot of really smart, experienced, successful people, is most of our suffering doesn't come from what happens in reality. It actually comes from the argument that we have with ourselves about reality after something happens. And the mind is very good at that argument. Now, if you've read my book, The Inner CEO, or if you're listening to these podcasts or done some work with me, you'll know that one of the central tenets that I have is that you have a mind, you are not your mind. It's a really critical thing to remember. And life is separate to our minds. And life wants to go its own way. And when it doesn't, our minds then will react. Now, our minds in particular, the intellect, the ego in particular, reacts, it protests, and it likes to throw its toys out of the pram, just like a little baby, little child, little toddler who's not getting what they want. They have a little fit. But the key point that I want to get across in today's episode is that real, tangible, meaningful growth starts when you stop insisting that life meets your expectations. Now, if you consider it, your mind does have preferences. I want things to be this way. These are my plans. This is the way I want things to be. This is the way I want people around me to be. It has ideas about how things should unfold. And there's nothing wrong with that because we are creative beings. We can shape reality. But it is limited because you're not your mind. You have one. And again, when the mind doesn't get what it wants, it often will just have a fit like a kid. Frustration, blame, resistance, anxiety, stress, maybe even collapse. But real inner maturity, now, not just with age, but inner maturity shows up when you can say legitimately, okay, this isn't what I want. This isn't what I wanted, but I'm willing to stay open anyway, and I'm willing to accept it. And I think that shift alone changes everything. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't deal with something, that you don't take action on something. But the difference is you're dealing with it now, if you're in that zone, with your most powerful asset available to you as a human, which is a calm, clear, centered mind, what I call a 3C mind. Now, if you just think about how quickly we label events in our work and in our lives, like, okay, this is a good thing, this is a bad thing. And I think about that quote from Shakespeare, there's nothing good or bad, but thinking make it so. Our thinking determines how we see something as good or bad. And language and how we think does determine how we feel. And how we feel impacts hugely how we handle situations and our outlook. So the mind will go, well, this is a disaster, or this shouldn't have happened, or I don't like this, but I like this. It should be over here. It shouldn't be there. But the reality is that no matter what happens, we never know the full consequences in the moment. What looks like loss can very often be redirection. What looks like failure can be preparation for something important in the future. And what looks like an ending can very often be the start of something very vital in your life. The challenge is that the mind wants certainty now. Now, if you think you're your mind, that's a problem, because now that means you want certainty now, which is very unsettling. But life doesn't work that way. Life doesn't really care about what you want. And I know this personally myself, as you probably would know if you listened to the early episodes of this podcast. Like, there was a period in my life where I was deeply unhappy. I was depressed, and largely because, on reflection, I believed that I wasn't living the life that I wanted to live. And from my mind's perspective, things weren't working out. And that kind of thinking was very unhealthy for me. And it forced me, when I came through that kind of breakdown into breakthrough, that period forced me into exploring, into questioning, into learning about myself, and in particular about my inner world. And I'm still exploring that world. But out of that whole really terrible time, really such a difficult time, out of that came a career and a life that I genuinely love. And so weirdly, I wouldn't change anything, because I'm only for that experience, that difficulty, it actually opened up something that I just is so, I do what I love, the work that I do. I wouldn't change anything, which is weird. But at the time, it felt like the world was ending. My world was ending. Everything was going wrong. I was a loser. I was a failure. But in reality, it was the start of something far better being shaped. But I couldn't see it yet. And I wonder, as you're listening to me, could you see that in your own life journey, maybe even at the moment or in the past? I think a kind of a simple metaphor to bring this point home is, imagine that you're on a train and you want to get to a specific destination. And you're going in a direction, and then you're told by the train conductor, oh, we have to stop, get off at this other station and wait for another train, because this train can't take us any further. So there's a delay, and you're angry, you're tense, and maybe you're saying to yourself, God, this is typical, it's unfair, this service is always unreliable. But maybe what you don't know yet is that the train you were on, or the track you were on, was originally, maybe it's blocked, and the detour and the change is the only way that they can get you to your destination. Now, that suffering then wasn't because of the change. The suffering was arguing with the change, or what you didn't like. And life, I think, often works like that. And, I've so many stories, even with clients, so many. I'll tell you one where I had a client, very good sized business, like an 8-figure size business, and there was a very significant regulation change in their industry. And I remember meeting this owner, CEO, who was really giving out about the change, how it was unfair. They were going to lose millions. It was going to affect a huge amount of their profit, and it was going to affect significantly his plans to exit the business in a few years the way he was hoping to. But through some conversations and reflections around his inner game, he realized, oh, I'm stressing myself out here. I'm creating more mental fog. It is reality. Let me just accept it. And actually, not just that, let me actually look for the opportunity in this change, which is a very interesting skill, mental skill, very, very powerful, which he did. And after a series of months, he saw an opportunity because of the regulation change. And then he pursued that opportunity. And this only happened because of the regulation change. It opened up a different area of their industry that previously was untapped. He got very much involved in it, invested in it. Within, I think, 2 to 3 years, they're making significant profits. He sold the business a few years later for a very healthy figure, way beyond what he originally had hoped for. So it was kind of life-changing figure of money. Now, before I get to some questions for you to think about, I just want to share something. It's a little bit of a plug for me, but it's also a story. I was talking to somebody recently. I was very grateful that they shared this with me. They were telling me that they bought my book, The Inner CEO, and they're on a flight from Dublin to New York. And they very rarely read books, but they liked the look of it. They read the first half of the book on the way over in the flight. So that really kind of made them think about their work, their life, how they operate. They did their business over in New York. And then on the way back from New York to Dublin, they read the second half of the book, and he said he was flabbergasted, but complimentary to me over the fact that the book just held his attention. But he said it also changed his life completely in terms of his perspective on himself and how he was looking at his work and his life. And I was very grateful. So if you haven't got the Inner CEO book yet, maybe you could use that as a prompt to check it out on audio or on Kindle or on paperback. So what about you in terms of thinking about my point today? Like, where in your work or your life might you be fighting what is reality? Like, what are you insisting shouldn't have happened? Maybe you're still just holding on to the anger or frustration or upset. And what might be possible if you stopped labeling this moment today as wrong and just took it as life? And if this situation, for example, was here to serve you, to help you grow, what might it be developing in you? Difficult question if you're really going through pain, but this is a powerful opportunity maybe to use that pain for growth. And could you allow for the possibility that not getting what you wanted, weirdly, might be exactly what you need? I mean, you don't have to like what's happening. You don't have to necessarily love it, even though I know some people will see that's a skill, which is an interesting one. But you don't have to resist it or give out about it either. So to close out, I think, look, the key takeaway point from today's episode for me is life doesn't always give you what you want, but it often gives you what you need once you stop fighting it. That's it for this week. Ciao for now.